Hello guys, and welcome back to 𝐤𝐤𝐲𝐢. In today's video, we will be going through the story of Zenitsu Agatsuma from Demon Slayer. Zenitsu was not raised by his parents, so he did not have any proper guidance. When he was young, Zenitsu fell in love with a girl and decided to give her money to appeal to her. However, the girl ended up running away with another guy, leaving Zenitsu drowning in debt. Seeing that he was in financial trouble with debt collectors, Jigoro Kuwajima paid off the debt for Zenitsu and decided to train him as a swordsman. Zenitsu began to refer to Jigoro as Gramps, and began to train alongside Gramps' other disciple, Kaigaku. One day when he was training, Zenitsu climbed up a tree out of fear that he was being trained to death, and as he began to panic, a stroke of lightning hit him, causing his hair to turn blonde. Zenitsu and Kaigaku hated each other. However, Zenitsu still respected him as his senior, and for his strong ambition. Zenitsu wished to fight alongside Kaigaku as equals one day, and developed his own 7th form, Hinoikazuchi no Kami. Final Selection Arc. After the final selection, Zenitsu is among the 4 people who have passed. Zenitsu is seen talking to himself, fearing he will die one day. Each one received a Kasugai crow, except Zenitsu, who got a sparrow. All 4 are told to choose what ore they want their sword to be made out of. Suzumi Mansion Arc. Zenitsu is seen by Tanjiro begging a random girl to marry him. Tanjiro stops him and excuses the girl. Zenitsu explains that he must get married before his next mission, because he might die. He asks Tanjiro to protect him until he gets married. Tanjiro asks him why he became a demon slayer, and Zenitsu explains that he got swindled by a woman and racked up debt. An old man paid off his debt and trained him. Later on, the two share a rice bowl as they travel to the south for their next mission. Zenitsu and Tanjiro arrive at a large house in the woods. Tanjiro smells an unfamiliar scent, and Zenitsu hears a strange sound. There are 2 kids nearby, frozen with fear, Soichi and Teruko. Tanjiro shows them Zenitsu's sparrow to try to calm them. The kids tell them about a monster who has taken their brother inside that house, and that they tracked the monster here. Tanjiro assures them that he and Zenitsu will rescue their brother and defeat the monster. Zenitsu asks about a non-stop sound of a Suzumi strike. Once the rest finally hear it, a bloody body is thrown out of the house and lands in front of them. The body is not that of the children's brother. Tanjiro leaves his box with the 2 children for protection. Although Zenitsu refuses to enter the house at first, he forces himself to join Tanjiro. Once inside, Tanjiro tells Zenitsu about his broken bones that haven't fully healed yet, which scares Zenitsu even more, since he can't rely much on Tanjiro for protection. The 2 kids are frightened by scratching coming from the box, and come inside the house after Zenitsu and Tanjiro. The house begins to rumble, and Tanjiro and Teruko are teleported to a random room in the house, while Zenitsu is left with Soichi. While searching for the exit, Zenitsu and Soichi find Inosuke, who runs past them. A scared Zenitsu and Soichi wander through the house when a demon sneaks up on them. A demon corners the 2 in a room, and Zenitsu passes out from fear. As the demon tries to strike them, Zenitsu cuts his tongue off. While unconscious, Zenitsu quickly defeats the demon. Zenitsu wakes up with no recollection of his actions, and thanks Soichi for defeating the demon. Zenitsu and Soichi enter a room, and the room rotates, throwing them out of a window. Once outside, they see Inosuke run out of the house. Inosuke attempts to attack Nezuko, who is inside the box, but Zenitsu protects her. Zenitsu explains his great hearing, and that he can hear living things breathing, heartbeat, and their blood circulation. Zenitsu knew Tanjiro was traveling with the demon, and tells Inosuke to back off, as he is going to ask Tanjiro himself why he's traveling with a demon. Inosuke continuously attacks Zenitsu, in an attempt to kill Nezuko. Tanjiro attacks Inosuke to stop him, and the 2 begin to fight. Inosuke passes out from Tanjiro's headbutt. After burying the dead they found inside the house, a crow sends the 3 demon slayers to a house for them to rest in. An elderly lady attends to them while they are there. Nadagumo Mountain Arc. Zenitsu, Tanjiro, and Inosuke head to Nadagumo Mountain for their next mission. They reach their destination at night. They meet a demon slayer laying on the ground, who begs them for help as he is pulled into the forest by spider threads. Out of fear, Zenitsu refuses to go into the forest. Tanjiro and Inosuke proceed without him. Zenitsu contemplates about not joining his friends. Zenitsu realizes that Tanjiro took Nezuko along with him, and runs in after them to protect Nezuko. While running through the forest, Zenitsu sees a human head with a spider's body. Zenitsu runs away, only to stumble across the demon responsible for turning these humans into spider slaves. Zenitsu is hit by a spider, and only has 30 minutes before he also turns into a spider. Zenitsu faints from fear, and begins to fight while unconscious. Zenitsu has a flashback of his teacher, who encouraged and never abandoned him, and his senior disciple, who always looked down on him. Zenitsu is only able to do the 1st form, but honed it to perfection, defeating the demon with the thunder-breathing 1st form, Thunderclap and Flash. Rehabilitation Training Arc. He complains to Kyo about the medicine he has to take. Tanjiro, Godo, and Aoi Kanzaki arrive, with the latter scolding Zenitsu for his constant complaining. Tanjiro and Zenitsu reunite, the scarred youth asking his friend if he is alright, and Zenitsu responding by bitterly complaining about everything he has been through since the Nadagumo Mountain incident. Tanjiro asks Zenitsu about Inosuke and Murata, and the tow-headed youth tells him that Inosuke is right next to him. Tanjiro asks Inosuke to forgive him for not coming back to help him, but is told not to worry about it. Dumbfounded by Inosuke's different-sounding voice, Tanjiro was told by Zenitsu about their friend's condition, a badly injured throat. After a rundown of Tanjiro, Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Nezuko's respective conditions, the four comrades take a much-deserved rest. They are later visited by Murata, who explains what happened to him when he was summoned to the Hashira meeting, and Shinobu, who tells them that their rehabilitation training was about to begin. Zenitsu muses over his medical treatment and the condition of the people turned into spiders. He then thinks about Shinobu and her treatment of these individuals, noting that her sound is irregular and somewhat unsettling. He goes on to note that Tanjiro and Inosuke had been taken by her to undergo the rehabilitation training and had come back extremely exhausted and bedraggled, causing him to despair, as he was to join the training the next day. The next day, Zenitsu joins his friends at the training, where Aoi Kanzaki explains that there are three parts: a massage to loosen the body, reflex training with Kaneo, and whole body training, which is essentially tag, with Kaneo and herself. An irate Zenitsu takes his friends aside and chastises them, annoyed that they had been fooling around with girls but had come back to the room looking so miserable. Tanjiro asks his tow-headed friend what in the world he is talking about, but the maddened youth tells him to shut up, explaining that this training involves a lot of physical contact, which essentially translates into being touched by the girls on a frequent basis, something he sees as pure bliss. Inosuke, also irritated at this point, says that Zenitsu doesn't know what he is talking about, stating that he'll die inside when he loses to someone with a smaller body, only to be mocked by his friend. All three of them then got started with the training, with Zenitsu succeeding due to his love of women, but Inosuke making things difficult for everybody due to his hatred of losing. Despite the overall positive performance of his two friends, Tanjiro continues to lose. He is soon joined by his two fellows. However, neither of them can best Kaneo at the reflex training or the whole body training. Over the next 5 days, the three continue their efforts to beat her, but none of them succeed, causing Zenitsu and Inosuke to give up. Tanjiro continues to persevere, but is unable to make any progress, continuing to lose for another 10 days. Having just witnessed Tanjiro beat Kaneo during his rehabilitation test, Zenitsu and Inosuke stagger as they try to learn total concentration breathing from Tanjiro. However, despite numerous attempts, the two boys were unable to grasp the concept of the technique and struggle to master it. During one of Tanjiro's lessons, Shinobu interrupts to provide guidance and words of encouragement to both Inosuke and Zenitsu. The methods she uses to encourage them include doubting Inosuke's ability in order to get him fired up, as well as telling Zenitsu she's personally cheering for him specifically, so he gets excited. 9 days pass after her visit, and both Zenitsu and Inosuke have successfully mastered the breathing technique. Having said goodbye to Sumi, Naho, and Kyo, the trio arrive at the train station. Zenitsu begins to act erratically after realizing they weren't given any orders and could have remained at the Butterfly Mansion. While trying to deflect Zenitsu's assault, Tanjiro explains his reasoning that they needed to leave in order to find Kyojuro and that it would have been easier to receive orders while they were in public. Mugen Train Arc. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu stand in front of a train. Inosuke, who has no idea what a train is, describes it as the master of the land and plans to attack it. Zenitsu tries to explain it as a steam engine, but Tanjiro interjects by suggesting that it is a guardian spirit and that they should not attack it. Zenitsu finally explains that it is a vehicle that carries people. Unsurprisingly, Inosuke charges headfirst into the side of the train, which causes a run-in with the police due to the fact that they have swords, and also the fact that Inosuke headbutted the train. Soon after, Zenitsu explains that the Demon Slayer Corps are not officially recognized by the government, and that they should conceal the fact that they carry swords. Tanjiro also notes the train is called the Infinite Train, and that Kyojuro has probably boarded it already, as Zenitsu proceeds to buy tickets for the train. As they enter the train, Inosuke is his own boisterous self, screaming about being inside the train and causing a ruckus. Zenitsu asks about Kyojuro, and Tanjiro describes him as someone with flashy hair, and notes that he is very close. The trio suddenly hear loud clamors of "tasty" inside the train and trace it to Kyojuro. He is described as a glutton by Zenitsu upon meeting. As a demon appears from the opposite end of the train, Kyojuro notes that he was unable to sense him. He proceeds to draw his sword and manages to finish the demon. The trio acclaim Kyojuro to train them, to which he agrees. Subsequently, Kyojuro and the trio fall asleep on the train. Within the train, Tanjiro, Kyojuro, Zenitsu, and Inosuke can be seen sleeping soundly. Zenitsu dreams of having a romantic date with Nezuko in a peach orchard. It is pitch black inside Zenitsu's subconscious, as Enmu's minion stumbles around, trying to find his spiritual core. Abruptly, the sound of sharp blades breaks the silence, and Zenitsu appears behind the minion, holding a large pair of shears. Enraged at finding a boy inside his subconscious, he says only Nezuko is allowed there and attacks the minion. Later on, a sleeping Zenitsu Agatsuma drops in front of Nezuko and manages to not only set Nezuko free, but also the other passengers around them in a flash by using thunder breathing, first form. Thunderclap and flash sixfold. He declares that he will protect Nezuko, and she looks on in awe. Her admiration is quickly dispelled, however, as he pops back asleep mid-sentence and begins to snore. Both of them defend 3 cars of the train from Enmu. After the train is stopped and during the fight between Kyojuro and Akaza, Nezuko falls asleep in the arms of a sleeping Zenitsu as well. After the sunrise, Zenitsu gets her into the box to protect her from the sunlight. Sometime later, Zenitsu informed Tanjiro and Inosuke of Kyojuro's heroics, in which he had used an extensive amount of his techniques to save passengers when the train derailed. He then asked Tanjiro if an upper rank really had come and if they were that strong, which the youth confirmed. A tearful Tanjiro expresses his lack of strength and aid to Kyojuro's fight, wondering if he could ever be like him. Zenitsu points out that Inosuke is also crying, causing him to be headbutted by the latter. Entertainment District Arc. 4 months after the passing of Kyojuro and Goku, the 3 boys have been training relentlessly at the Butterfly Mansion, while occasionally leaving on individual missions. As Zenitsu goes on solo missions, he becomes less of a whiner. Since Tengen Uzui is willing to give Aoi Kanzaki up for his mission, Tanjiro demands that he gives her up and offers to go in her place. At that moment, Zenitsu and Inosuke arrive to help protect the girls, and they offer to go on the mission as well. Tanjiro, Inosuke, and Zenitsu accompany the Sound Hashira, Tengen, on a mission to Yoshiwara. On their way to the site, Tengen reveals they are going to investigate the disappearance of his wives within the entertainment district. Once they arrive at home, Tengen informs the group to be on the lookout for someone he could marry, which infuriates Zenitsu. He angrily tells Tengen to stop screwing around and to stop using members of the Corps as his matchmakers. Tengen blows up and yells that he doesn't need a matchmaker since he's already married, and that they're searching for his wife who failed to respond to his letters. Zenitsu doesn't believe him and tells Tengen to stop telling his fantasies, causing Tengen to angrily whack him in the face with the piles of letters. Tanjiro begins to sift through the letters, noticing the large quantity, and comments that she must be a fast writer, to which Tengen clarifies that the large quantity is due to the fact that he has 3 wives. After hearing this, Zenitsu's head explodes with rage. Thinking that Tengen is lying, he demands to know how it is possible to have 3 wives. Tengen gets angry at his remarks and punches Zenitsu in the stomach, knocking him unconscious. As the group finally arrives, Tengen uses his charming looks to try to give away the boys who are disguised as girls, and is successfully able to give Tanjiro away to the Tokito house. Tengen proceeds down the street with the other 2 boys in tow, with Zenitsu seething in anger at the fact that Tengen is proudly flaunting his visuals. Inosuke and Tengen notice a courtesan coming towards them on the street, and learn that the courtesan named Koinatsu is on her way to greet a suitor. Zenitsu notices the courtesan and angrily yells at Tengen, demanding to know if that's his wife as well, earning him a punch in the face. Zenitsu fearfully realizes that he is the only one left with Tengen. In the Kyogoko house, Zenitsu calms down after his emotional performance and begins to search for Hinatsuru. Due to the fact that the staff is mourning the manager's death, he has had trouble collecting any information on her whereabouts. Zenitsu decides to use his advanced sense of hearing in order to listen to try to find any information. In doing so, he overhears a girl quietly sobbing and rushes to find her. When he arrives, he discovers the room is destroyed and the young girl disheveled in the middle of it. He approaches her, but she begins to sob again, causing Zenitsu to frantically try and comfort her. As he's kneeling on the ground, Zenitsu gets the chills as he senses something approaching from behind. The courtesan of the house, Warabihime, glares down at them and coldly demands to know what business he has in her room. Without turning around, Zenitsu realizes that the sound she's giving off is not human, and realizes that she is the demon that the demon slayers have been searching for. She angrily repeats her question after Zenitsu fails to respond, and one of the other girls of the house explains that she's new to the house. Zenitsu attempts to apologize and explain that he was checking on the girl, but this angers the demon, who rudely calls Zenitsu ugly and creepy, leaving him shocked. She looks around to see that the room is still a mess, and pulls the girl who was crying by the ear, causing her to yell out in pain. The girl apologizes for failing to clean the room, but she continues to harm the girl, causing her to yell out in agony. Unable to put up with the abuse, Zenitsu grabs the demon by the arm, demanding that she let the girl go. She becomes angry and slams him into the wall, rendering him unconscious. She openly voices her disgust and demands that he never touch her again, and eerily remarks that she will administer harsh discipline. As she leaves the room, she has her doubts about Zenitsu and realizes that he isn't an ordinary human and might possibly be a member of the Demon Slayers. Tengen stealthily arrives at the meeting with Tanjiro and Inosuke undetected and proclaims that Zenitsu will not be arriving and that he is missing. He also mentions that he might have put the boys in immediate danger. Tengen tells Inosuke and Tanjiro that they must leave the district before the upper-rank demons make their move, and announces that he will be continuing the mission alone. Tanjiro tries to argue his decision, however Tengen quickly leaves as fast as he arrived. Over at the Kyugoku house, Omitsu's husband is seen holding a kimono in his hand. Tengen appears in the room and puts a kunai to his throat, demanding to know the whereabouts of Zenitsu. The man quickly reveals that Zenitsu had suddenly disappeared. Elsewhere, Inosuke can be seen cackling as he discovers a hole leading to a demon nest. He jumps in the hole, and once he arrives, He sees multiple people being held captive within the 𝐕 and discovers Zenitsu knocked out among them as well. As he tries to wake him up, the 𝐕 begins to move, demanding to know why Inosuke is there. Inosuke begins his assault against the 𝐕 by slicing sections of it while simultaneously insulting it. Zenitsu soon wakes up and quickly attacks the 𝐕 as well. The ceiling explodes and breaks down, stopping the fight. After Tanjiro and Tengen manage to defeat Daki, her brother Gyutaro emerged from her body. Zenitsu and Inosuke flamboyantly announce their arrival to the fight, which confuses everyone. Gyutaro and Daki get riled up and reveal that they've eaten 15 and 7 Hashira respectively, and begin to attack the Demon Slayers. As Daki attempts to attack Tengen and Tanjiro from behind, Zenitsu bursts through the home within seconds to block the attack as Inosuke follows him. On the rooftop, Daki finally recognizes Zenitsu from the Kyogoku house, and he demandingly commands her to apologize to the girl whom he had found crying earlier. She mocks his speech by revealing that women are treated like merchandise within the district, and as the courtesan, she was allowed to do as she pleased with all of the girls, since she was the main breadwinner of the house. When she looks up at Zenitsu, a third eye appears on Daki's forehead, revealing that Gyutaro can see them via her new eye. Zenitsu and Inosuke can be seen covered in cuts and wounds as they prepare to battle with Daki. The two boys fight ferociously against the demon, but struggle as they try to evade attacks from Daki's 𝐕. The boys realize that Daki is now attacking them with the blood blades used by Gyutaro, making it impossible for them to approach her. Zenitsu calls out to Inosuke and explains that in order to defeat them, they just need to make sure their heads aren't connected, instead of trying to decapitate the two simultaneously. Inosuke comically looks at Zenitsu amazed and calls him awesome, after seeing the difference in his personality compared to his usual demeanor. Tanjiro joins the fight and informs his comrades that they need a fast attack in order to cut her neck. Inosuke realizes that she has slowed down and decides to go first, as Zenitsu agrees with Tanjiro to protect him from behind. Inosuke proceeds to dash forward using beast breathing, while Zenitsu and Tanjiro use their breathing forms to protect him from the 𝐕. Daki begins to crack under the pressure as Inosuke closes in on her. He manages to draw both of his blades on either side of her neck. Inosuke buries his heels into the ground as he uses beast breathing, Sixth Fang, to effectively decapitate Daki. On a nearby rooftop, Daki can be seen still alive, trying to help her brother. But before she can get to him, Zenitsu manages to free himself from the rubble and attacks her by using his thunder breathing. Zenitsu pleads with his blade to cut through her neck, since he was given the chance to escape the rubble and attack her, while Gyutaro was subdued. She attempts to use her 𝐕 to kill Zenitsu at close range, but Inosuke unexpectedly rushes up, revealing that he protected his heart from being stabbed by rearranging his organs. He also reveals that poison has no effect on him, since he was raised on the mountains, before proceeding to assist Zenitsu in decapitating Daki. The three boys let out a roar as they muster out the strength to slice through the demons' necks. After the long battle, Zenitsu and Inosuke manage to decapitate Daki up on the rooftop, while Tanjiro can be seen decapitating Gyutaro simultaneously on the ground. Later, after Tanjiro returned from Swordsmith Village, Zenitsu arrived at Butterfly Mansion and found out that Nezuko can now walk in the sun and speak. Zenitsu screams and says he's having a heart attack and grabs Nezuko, before screaming more about how cute and absolutely amazing, wonderful, and marvelous it is that Nezuko is able to be out in the sun. It is then decided that all Demon Slayers will go through Hashira training in order to prepare themselves for the fight against Muzan. After finishing one part of the training, Tanjiro was instructed to go to the next section of the training, with the Wind Hashira Sanemi. On his way there, he encounters Zenitsu, who had fled from the intense and brutal tutelage. However, Sanemi caught up with him, threatening him back into the Spartan-like conditions and ultimately knocking him out. Tanjiro and Zenitsu make their way to the Stone Hashira's training ground. There they find Inosuke and the other Demon Slayers training under a waterfall, and are greeted by the Stone Hashira, meditating in a particular way, which resulted into Zenitsu proclaiming that it's not a training ground, but a hell ground. The training was horrendous, and Zenitsu kept on complaining about the freezing waterfall. Even Inosuke, who was working hard, ended up drowning. While eating grilled fish together with the other Demon Slayers, Inosuke asserted that the Stone Hashira is the strongest in their organization. Zenitsu, on the other hand, was still in disbelief that Kyomei was able to move a boulder across town, but was dumbfounded when he saw the Hashira push an even bigger rock. Eventually, Zenitsu and his friends were able to complete the waterfall and log-carrying training, but they were still unable to push the boulder away. During the Hashira training, Zenitsu receives word that Kagaku has become a demon, and that his master Jigoro committed seppuku as atonement. The Demon Slayers soon received a letter from the Ubuyashiki estate, warning them about Muzan's appearance. All Hashiras, alongside young Demon Slayers, rush towards the estate, but as soon as they arrive, they witness a huge explosion. They soon find out that Kagaya blew up his mansion in order to weaken Muzan. As the Demon Slayers prepare to attack Muzan, giant doors suddenly appear and slide open under the Demon Slayers, causing all of them to plummet into the Infinity Castle. Muzan mocks them for believing they had him cornered, and declares he will kill them all tonight. Inside the Infinity Castle, Zenitsu comes across Kagaku, his former friend. Zenitsu and Kagaku face off, Kagaku mocking Zenitsu as puny and weak, scoffing at his status as a Demon Slayer since he's only able to do one form. Zenitsu retaliates by mentioning how happy his former superior seems as the bottom of the upper rank. Zenitsu questions why he had turned into a demon, but when Kagaku tries to answer, Zenitsu cuts him off and continues. he angrily yells that 𝐸𝐳 had committed seppuku by himself upon hearing what Kagaku has done. Someone was meant to assist him in the act, but instead, he died agonizing and alone, all because a user of the thunder breathing became a demon. Kagaku scoffs at the news and asks if he is meant to be sad or repent, unapologetically refusing to care. He declares he will always stick to those who value him. He states he is glad 𝐸𝐳 died a painful death, angered that all his efforts to please him never led to him being named his successor, and insults him further by scoffing at the idea of sharing the successorship with the dirt like Zenitsu. Zenitsu furiously tells him that if he was dirt, Kagaku was garbage, since he never managed to learn the first form, commenting that 𝐸𝐳 died miserable because he wasn't lucky enough to have a true successor. Kagaku angrily tells him not to put the likes of himself with him and unleashes the thunder-breathing, 4th form, sending lightning at the demon slayer. However, Zenitsu has already avoided the attack and slashed the demon's neck, mocking him. Kagaku is stunned his opponent has already sliced him and comments he seems like a completely different person. Declaring everybody has to die eventually, and saying 𝐸𝐳 and Zenitsu are no exception, Kagaku uses the thunder-breathing, 2nd form, to kill him. Zenitsu takes notice of his 5 simultaneous attacks and deduces he must have eaten numerous people already. Asking if the demon knows right from wrong, Kagaku responds that those who accept him are right, and those who don't are wrong. He then uses thunder-breathing 5th form, Heat Lightning, hitting Zenitsu and burning him. As he continues to attack Zenitsu, he asks him how he is liking his new demon-enhanced forms. As Zenitsu falls after being hit, he remembers back to his days training alongside Kagaku. Ironically, while Zenitsu only managed to do the 1st form, Kagaku was able to do all but the 1st form of thunder breathing. He knew Kagaku virulently hated him, and Zenitsu himself also hated Kagaku greatly. But despite this, he genuinely respected Kagaku for his work ethic and drive, and despite his place as special within 𝐸𝐳's students, it never satisfied him. Apologizing to 𝐸𝐳 and Kagaku, he lands on the wall and stops his fall. As a confused Kagaku looks on, Zenitsu uses thunder breathing, 7th form, and speeds upwards, decapitating Kagaku. As the upper rank demon becomes enraged as he never saw it coming, he curses his former master for teaching Zenitsu something he never taught him. Zenitsu replies that 𝐸𝐳 was never such a person, and that he created this form himself. After Zenitsu beheads Kagaku, both start to fall down to their deaths. Zenitsu plummets unconsciously as the disintegrating Kagaku grows furious at his defeat from Zenitsu's hands. He comforts himself with the idea that Zenitsu will die with him when they hit the ground. However, Yushiro comes to save Zenitsu, while coldly reminding Kagaku that without friends he will end up with nothing, finally commenting that dying alone sure is pathetic. Zenitsu awakens in a land full of red spider lilies and sees his former master, 𝐸𝐳, across a river. Zenitsu breaks down in front of him, crying in remorse and regret for not being able to save Kagaku and being unable to become a Hashira before his death. As Zenitsu struggles with being caught with the lilies, he realizes that 𝐸𝐳 hasn't said anything to him. 𝐸𝐳 breaks his silence by calling out Zenitsu's name, and with tearful eyes, he proclaims that Zenitsu is his pride and joy. In reality, Zenitsu is being patched up by Yushiro while being guarded by Murata and another demon slayer. Murata realizes he remembers Zenitsu and calls out, hoping for his survival, leading Yushiro to tell him to shut up. Yushiro tells Zenitsu he was lucky Kagaku was inexperienced with his demon power. Had he fought him a year later, he would have ended up dead. Murata yells not to be so negative, attracting demons to their location, to Yushiro's charging. Later, while the Hashira's battle against Muzan, Inosuke, Kaneo, and Zenitsu suddenly pop into view as the seals placed on their heads get sliced off by Muzan's attacks. They are taken aback at how quickly he was able to find them, but Guillaume is pleasantly surprised to notice them all still alive. Kaneo and Zenitsu hurriedly put on new seals and attack Muzan with flower breathing and thunder breathing respectively. After Tanjiro woke up from his dream, he saw that Sanemi has been flung into the upper story of a tall building, while Obanai, Zenitsu, and Inosuke are all unconscious in the rubble. Muzan launches an attack on Inosuke and manages to ensnare the young demon slayer. Suddenly, Inosuke is saved by Zenitsu, who slices through Muzan's arm whip. Yelling at Tanjiro to continue fighting, Zenitsu tries to bolster his spirits and tells him not to die, so that Nezuko could become human again and they could go back to the house they used to live in. Muzan smacks Zenitsu into a building, but Inosuke quickly slices up his whip to prevent further damage. Zenitsu notices that he is losing strength, and he would only be able to muster one more attack with his full power. He then unleashes thunder breathing, 7th form, but only produces a shallow cut on Muzan. Zenitsu remembers his mentor 𝐸𝐳 and asks him to give him the kick he needs. As Inosuke and Tanjiro continue their combined onslaught on Muzan with their respective breathing forms, Zenitsu performs another thunder breathing, but is aggravated by the fact that he is too slow. Inosuke gets knocked back, but Tanjiro is able to continue attacking Muzan with his sun breathing. Zenitsu takes a blow intended for Tanjiro, which allows Tanjiro to finally defeat Muzan. The sun rises on a new day, disintegrating Muzan, and everyone heaves a sigh of relief, crying as their battle is finally over. Zenitsu asks the Kukushi tending to him to tell Nezuko that he loved her and was brave, fighting to the very end, calling her his wife, as others point out he is not married. Suddenly, a presumably dead Tanjiro starts breathing, and 𝐸𝐢 looks on in shock as the boy takes advantage of the Hashira's surprise to attack him, as Tanjiro follows up with another swipe that is intercepted by Inosuke, who yells at his friend and asks him what he is doing. Inosuke stands over him and tries to remind Tanjiro that 𝐬𝐢 is their ally as Zenitsu approaches the scene, supported by Kikuchi. Zenitsu looks on in disbelief at the scene and says that everyone is tired and unable to continue fighting, asking for Tanjiro to think of Nezuko. 𝐬𝐢, Inosuke, and Zenitsu look on in shock as Nezuko runs forward and hugs her demonified brother. Inosuke and Zenitsu rush forward to help Nezuko and try to bring their friend back. Zenitsu grabs Tanjiro from behind and begs him to stop hurting Nezuko, telling him that she had become a human again and that she might die if he continues. Angered, Tanjiro lets out a feral howl and sends out a shockwave that flings Inosuke, Zenitsu, and 𝐬𝐢 back as Nezuko desperately clings to her brother. She falls to the ground as Tanjiro gets on all fours and releases bone whips, similar to those of Muzan, from his back. She begs him to keep fighting his newfound demonic tendencies. However, he still swings a whip towards Zenitsu. 𝐬𝐢 intercepts the attack by performing the water breathing, saving Zenitsu and the Kikuchi propping him up. Tanjiro is eventually injected with the medicine and turned back into a human. 3 months after the battle against Muzan, the world is now free of evil demons, and all the survivors of the battle resolve to continue living despite all they lost. Tanjiro recovers at the Butterfly Mansion and sees the cherry blossoms in bloom alongside Nezuko. Inosuke and Zenitsu sleep peacefully at the other end of Tanjiro's bed. When they arrive back at the Kamado household, they find that flowers are growing outside the house and pay respect to the other Kamados by kneeling in front of the flowers and praying. They begin their new life together at the Kamado household. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to us. We will see you guys very soon in one of our next videos.